Hello, and welcome back to the Sword of Truth podcast, the chapter-by-chapter reread of the Sword of Truth series with a healing craft brew on the side.
Oh.
I'm Jade, and I'm here with Nate.
Hello.
And today we're going to be talking about this version of Chapter 34 of Soul of the Fire.
What?
Or whatever, you know?
No, what? This version?
Yeah, whoever's telling it gets to say it however they want.
That's kind of what we do.
Yeah, basically.
Fuck yeah. Does that mean we're the victors?
I guess. Yeah.
If you squint at it,
Yeah.
most of the things are either rickety or you gotta squint at it.
Hey, I will take a win where I can.
Yeah, fuck yeah. Fuck yeah.
Okay, so before we get into this one today, this chapter may be difficult. There are a lot of hot button topics, some that bleed pretty clearly into current issues, and some that just kind of pull at the edges of them. We are definitely not the authority on any of it, but we do have opinions, surprise, which everyone may not agree with. Some of the ideas in this chapter don't feel super great to us, and it's just super hard to sidestep that. As always, we welcome and encourage our listeners to let us know how you feel about it. Correct us if we get something wrong, because we very well may make mistakes.
Pah! I don't believe it.
I do.
Yeah, no, it's true.
Yeah. So feel free to comment wherever you're listening or on Facebook, or come join the conversation on Discord with our patrons, because we're always chatting there and people there constantly are telling us when we make mistakes, which we love.
In the very best way.
They do, in a nice way.
Yeah.
In a good way.
Our patrons are a very cool group of people who always, I mean, we do get corrections, but we also have great discussions over there, and it's usually worth the time it takes to have them.
I would always rather be corrected so I can be better. So that's today's moment of truth, and we're going to get right the fuck into this now.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, let's dive in. Strap in.
Do whatever it is you gotta do. Pour that double or whatever.
Hope you had fun blasting off your fireworks, because here we go.
Because let's talk about some conquest.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah. Or whatever.
So, we start off the chapter. Dew is being tended to by the Blade Masters and the Hunters. She's getting tea and tava porridge.
Yeah, everybody is kind of chipping in to make sure Dew's okay. Like both sides.
Yeah.
It was cool.
Tava porridge, real quick. Tava is like their bread, or like flatbread, I imagine. So it's like bread pudding, right? Bread porridge, right?
Would assume. I don't really know what that is to begin with, so
I just thought that was interesting. I was like, oh, I didn't know you could make porridge out of it.
I would be interested in maybe looking at some of the more of these Sword of Truth recipes on our Patreon. We did do a spice soup episode.
Yeah.
Where we made and tried spice soup. And if there are real recipes to some of these things, I would fucking love to try them.
See, now that I'm thinking about it, I think, again, I'm just missing out on the fundamentals of some things sometimes when I talk, because tava is probably made with a wheat-like substance, right? Tava bread. So then the wheat-like tava is also able to be made into a porridge. That's probably all it is.
Tava porridge, just doing a quick search online, likely refers to kashil, a traditional Armenian porridge made from toasted wheat and served with caramelized onions, clarified butter, and yogurt sauce. Do not know what yogurt sauce is. We'll have to look at that. But it's a hearty dish with a distinct flavor profile from the toasted wheat and the accompanying savory toppings. So yeah, it's something like that.
I'm guessing that tava is their version of wheat. I probably didn't even need to talk about this, but here we are learning.
Well, I mean, I have a more than mild interest in food, and I do need it like every day. So food's not important.
Yeah.
I think Zed would agree.
Yeah, I like to pay attention.
Food's not something we should talk about.
So Richard and everybody but Kara is shocked that Dew's back from the dead, so everybody's just kind of standing around staring at her for a moment.
That really fucking happened.
Holy shit balls.
Guys, we got this war solved. Kara, just go make tons and tons and tons of more Mord Sith. So we could just do that to everybody.
Just go make more. Do you remember how Mord Sith are made?
You don't have to do all that bit. They give him the magic that Kara won't admit. It's kind of like the chicken thing with Richard. Magic that's not magic. But then you could just have a 1-for-1. Each soldier gets a Mord Sith to go with him in a battle, and then she can just revive him and then keep his ass going.
We need to talk more about that.
I just won the fucking war.
No, we need to talk more about that at a later date because I
Okay.
have thoughts about what you just said, but we have so much fucking shit to cover. That
I know.
can't.
I guarantee it's wrong.
That's not why I want to talk about it more.
Okay.
Spoiler alert.
Oh.
Richard also has no doubt at this point what he needs to do. He's already resolute in his decision.
Richard knows what he must do.
Yeah. All right, let's talk for another hour and a half.
But we're not doing it yet.
So then we get a rundown of the known history of Kahlan.
The known history of Kahlan.
The known history of Anderith from Kahlan. And the reason I chose the word known history is because we are getting a history that is known to the people of this world. We're not getting like a accurate telling from the narrator.
Nothing we hear here is probably actually
100%
true.
Right. So Anderith was invaded by the Hakans, and the Anders teach that the Hakans use the Domini Dirch against them. But the wizards teach it differently. History's muddled because, whoever tells it gets to kind of control the teaching of it. And that seems to be a very common theme, like throughout this whole book so far. It's not just, I guess it's very linked to the history of Anderith, but it keeps being put back in your face.
The victor writes the history.
Yeah. But what's interesting is, like, even the wizards, they're not involved. They weren't the victors. And you would think it's the most truthful without being closely connected because they don't have skin in the game.
Yeah, I think that's why Richard asked for the wizards' version of the story, because they were the outside party. Richard is essentially asking for what the outside world believes happened here.
Yeah. But this seems to be less of a biased version of it. So 2,000 to 3,000 years ago is when this all fucking went down. It was a long time ago. The Hakans were a remote people from the wilds that invaded and somehow made it past the Domini Dirch. So they didn't bring it with them. They got past it.
They weren't turned into liquid hamburger somehow.
Right. Some were, but not all.
Yeah.
The Anders were a nomadic people comprised of smaller tribes that kind of fought amongst themselves, and the Hakans were kind of superior. They, in quotes, I'm going to put that in quotes. Just
right.
They had cavalry. Is that how you say that word? Cavalry.
It's cavalry.
Cavalry. Okay, sorry.
Calvary is a place in Canada?
I felt that's Calgary, too. That's not even the right thing.
Oh, well, shit. I don't know, dude.
I could tell when I said
cavalry.
Cavalry.
Those are the dudes on horses.
I could tell when I said it. It didn't feel right in my mouth. They had cavalry.
Nope. I'm so sorry. Oh.
They had cavalry?
No, there's no L before the V.
They had cavalry. They had coordination, tactics, command structure. Anders were comparatively uneducated. There wasn't literacy. They weren't good with metalworking or organizations, hence why the Hakans took them to heal easily.
Yeah, it wasn't necessarily an epic battle, but there are a couple of things in this very first bit here that don't make sense to me. Like, we made a joke about how the Domini Dirch aren't on wheels. So, like, did you turn it around? Or what's the deal there? It's a little weird, but that's where... This is just what we hear from the other people. That doesn't make any of it actually true. So there's no sense in being caught up on these details right now that don't make sense, because this is just what we know.
Yeah, and it does make it clear that the Anders teach that they used it. The wizards teach that they just got past it. They don't know how.
They got past it,
they just
right.
got past it.
Yeah, one side clearly does not make any sense. One side's like, okay, curious how that might be, but not altogether wrong.
Yeah, must not be impossible because it fucking happened.
They're in there now. Yeah, right. They're in there now.
Right. The Hakans apparently did not make war just for booty and slaves. This is where...
They did it because they liked it. Oh, sorry.
They're literate, right? So they brought their knowledge of everything. They brought higher maths, architecture, core skill farming on a larger scale. And they knew how to grow better crops and breed better livestock.
They could be productive. They were a productive people.
So the argument is that they brought war not for perdition, but for prosperity?
I believe the word is predation.
That could be. I wrote it down wrong.
That's okay. But yeah, the idea here is that, yes, they took over, but they're a prosperous people, right? They're making moves. They're making money, probably. Everybody's got enough to eat. But they're bringing their system to these people that didn't ask for it.
That's what I hear the argument, because it was brought to us at the beginning that the Hakens left the wilds because their land was probably unsuitable to them. So it just feels a little bit more conquesty than for the greater good, even though that could be a bad argument as well.
I mean, yeah, well, the idea here is that through no fault of their own, the Hakens were forced out of the lands that they occupied because they probably couldn't farm it. They show up in Anderith and they see that they have skills that these people could probably use, and then they took over by conquest. As opposed to being like, yo, so our place is not livable anymore. Let's set up an agreement between our two peoples where we help you and we don't slaughter you by the thousands.
Yeah. Well, we're going to get into that a little bit more.
Okay.
Once the victors came in, they supplanted the Ander ways. Like, they got rid of them. So the way we do things is better. So that's how we're going to do it. Now, your culture, the way you do things is not correct. We're going to do it this way. But peace came after that. So there's no more infighting between the tribes. It was harsh but brutal. Nope. Harsh, not brutal. Difference. They enfolded the Anders into their society.
Right.
So kind of a forced assimilation.
Obviously, we could draw a very distinct parallel between what happened here in America, but I honestly kind of feel like the more I've read this, because this is one of those hard parts, guys. I read this chapter like 6 times this week trying to figure this shit out. And I think what I realized is they're saying it was harsh, but it was not brutal, meaning it's not like what happened here.
Yeah.
Essentially, it was a better version than what happened here in America. So that gives me a little like, okay, maybe it wasn't as bad. Maybe, yeah, there was a takeover, but they didn't like slaughter people like what happened here.
But they did force them to change the way that they live.
But they did.
The Anders, they benefit. They did benefit. They had food plentiful, population multiplied by many, and the Hakens did bring orderly rule. So there is that. And it is said that the invading Hakens killed less Anders than the Anders killed regularly within their infighting, their own wars. So it's almost a kindness, right?
Well, okay. I don't know about that.
That was just me being cheeky.
I know. I mean, it's like how much bad is acceptable to ensure that good continues. It's playing in that line.
Yeah. In that sandbox.
Yeah. And the answer, unfortunately, is usually not 0.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. You know what I think brings prosperity to this podcast?
I mean, you, obviously.
What brings prosperity to my brain is beer right now. That's what I want. I don't know if this makes sense, but can we have a beer break?
Look me in the eye, deeply and meaningfully. You never have to ask me if we can take a beer break. Absolutely, JD.
All right. We'll be back right after this. Hey, Nate. What are we drinking today?
Today, we are drinking a couple beers, Jade, depending on what version it is you want to go with.
Oh, my gosh.
I myself am drinking Founders All Day Grapefruit, a session hazy grapefruit IPA that clocks in at 4.7%. And you are drinking Founders All Day Twist, a session lemon lime IPA, also clocking in at 4.7%.
Yes! Look at the trees on the cans. They have different fruits.
Yeah, mine have grapefruit and you have lemons and limes.
Yeah, that's cute.
It is cute. Here's the thing. They're IPAs. they both kind of do have that Rhiny taste. That when they're like, yo, this is orange, and it's not like you bit the fruit, but you bit the casing of the fruit. So while they are both the same, they are both a little bit different. They are also both kind of just plain. And that's not so bad.
That's why they're all day.
Exactly. Yeah, that was the point. They're not supposed to be the most flavorful thing. It's what your go-to. These are stock beers.
These are garage beers.
And that being in mind, I think I'm going to give mine a 6. It's fine. I don't love it, but it's not bad. It's more 6 than it is 4. I'll say that. There's not much flavor, but it's pleasant.
I think I will go up to a 5 from a 4. Not just because you just said that, but because...
Then I'm glad I did.
I am trying to score the IPAs against each other, not against the beer I like.
Because we have had some IPAs now that you've really liked and some that you super don't.
Yeah.
So it's not the style anymore that you're super against, but the majority of IPAs you are not a fan of.
Correct. Like if we're all picking a 6-pack to go on the river, this is not mine, but that's fine. I will drink it if somebody else is like, hey, I got some all-day IPAs in the fridge, twists or whatever the fuck this is called. I will drink it. I'd say maybe 5 limes.
5 limes. Perfect. Well, I obviously have to have said 6 grapefruits then.
Yeah.
6 grapefruit trees.
Hell yeah.
Ooh, can we get a grapefruit tree?
We could try.
Better finish the podcast first.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, let's get back into the chapter. And we're back. So we were talking before the break about how the Hakens had invaded and now they have assimilated the Anders into their way of doing shit.
Okay.
So the Haken system of justice may not have been fair, but it was better than what the Anders were previously doing. Because they were doing some brutal shit and just like fucking stoning people in the streets.
It was kind of like strongman rules.
Yeah.
I say it's cool because I can kick your ass if you disagree.
Yeah. I want your wife.
Your wife?
So I'm going to take your wife. So they showed them better ways to do things. They taught them how to read. The Anders were really quick to grasp a better way. So they glommed onto those better systems of doing things pretty quickly.
Yeah, they may not have had a better way by themselves, but they're adaptive people.
They're smart. They're not dumb. They can pick it up quick
Correct.
if you show it to them. So the system of justice only kept getting better and better. And, you know, Kahlan's point here is that civilization is a building process, the mixing of people, often via conquest. So you can't always judge by invasion and conquest. Which I don't know if that's necessarily, like, maybe on the surface, that's a very easy way to say that, because you never want to paint things black and white, right? It's never good to just stereotype or say all of this is bad.
I mean, one of the things that she mentions very early on in the chapter is that, yeah, conquest may not be great, but what it does contribute to is the mixing of people, which is a good thing.
Yes.
Because whenever you have 2 different groups of people come together, you can each get new solutions to problems that you couldn't get before.
And different points of view.
100%.
Yeah.
So it's not so much that she's trying to say that it's all good, though. But I think the reason that she has this attitude is that at the end of the day, that happened 2,000-3,000 years ago. There's nothing we can do about it now. The people are there. They are mixed. They exist together, and they have a system. In that way, they have figured it out themselves. They each prospered because of that, and it is what it is, even if it wasn't good.
I think the other thought that I had while I was reading this, which is maybe just a thought experiment, is colonizing a primitive tribe always mean that they're better off. Heating, plumbing, that stuff is great. Prospering, that sounds really great, but progress isn't necessarily always good. Like, people may not be advanced, but what if they are happier long term as a people, not being folded into a city and having to grind? Like, now you have to go to work every day. Now you have to deal with taxes and all this other stuff. Whereas before, you were a small village just supporting each other.
Yeah, if all you did today, and I'm not saying all because I wouldn't be capable of doing this necessarily, if all you did today was go out and kill some 400-pound hog that feeds half of your village, like, you had a good solid day's work. You're done, my guy. That's what you've contributed to society.
And I'm not saying that that's a better way of doing things for sure.
It works fine for many, many people. Then it's just survival of a group of people. It may not be whole-ass civilization that we think of today, but it is a way of survival. And I think the issue that people come up with here, or come against here, is that the Anders never asked for that. They never asked to be improved. What happened is the Hakens, their land kicked them out, so they had to move. And they acted violently instead of, like I maybe suggested at the top of the show, let's come up with an arrangement to do that. That would have been the best way, but that didn't happen.
Yeah, but I guess that's it, is that some people don't want to be progressed, and they should have a right to not, like, just because we think it's better, does that mean it is actually better? I don't know. Kahlan does use Dahara and Richard's conquest as an example about how the people weren't good before. It was a terrible land, and then Richard came in and invaded as one person and took it over, and now he's changing the ways and the culture of everybody.
Yeah. Now Dahara is good, when Dahara was the big bad evil country when we started this whole series.
I will say, I might not agree with everything that Richard's been doing, but the Mord Sith are still allowed to be Mord Sith. They just can't be as shitty. You know, like, everyone is still allowed to have their culture. He just won't let them do some of the more barbaric things. So I think that is maybe a little different. Which is, I think, why Richard feels it's a shame for a culture to be destroyed, because that's not how he is going about his conquest.
It is interesting to me, though, that they point out Richard's coming to power as a conquest when it's not conquest. He was literally born to the dude in charge, and that's like how it's gone for forever. Like, you were handed the empire, Richard. Whether or not your dad was evil and an asshole and you had to kill him, okay, fine. But when he died, you were going to be the guy anyway.
Yeah.
Now, I'm thankful that you're not a piece of shit, big bad evil guy. That is good. We want that. But also, you didn't fucking get it by conquest, my guy. Maybe the Midlands. Yeah. I see that point 100%.
But Kahlan's point at the beginning, like when she's talking here, she's talking about his conquest of Dahara, which isn't really conquest, which is what your point is.
Or is it his conquest of that ass? Because she's in charge of the Midlands.
Wow.
So, you know, they get married and the Midlands just comes over willingly. I'd say that's still not conquest because judges, Kahlan digs it.
Wow.
I believe this is where I'm supposed to say, but I digress.
Kahlan herself doesn't believe that culture carries privilege to exist. Cultures don't have value just because they are. She says that some cultures the world's better off without, like the Imperial Order. But there's cultural genocide, which is a thing. So it's dangerous to just be like, it's okay for bad cultures, quote unquote, to be erased. I think the point that we're toying with here is that the people were fine, but their culture, the things that made them Anders, was stripped from them. So I guess there's just a difference between invading and just wiping out a entire culture, like in the way of killing them, and assimilating them into your people and wiping out their culture.
100%. I do believe it goes back to the thing I referenced, and this is why I brought it up, because there's a way you can do it diplomatically. Come to the table with those people. Talk about those things. Figure out, hey, we could be really useful in this way to your people, and we need X thing, to where it's an agreement, because that's the way the mixing of people happens, and there's very, very few problems.
Yeah. The most healthy way is to allow people to still be who they are. Like
they are. Thank you.
Not strip them from their backgrounds, like adoption. Knowing who you are is good. Not necessarily being connected to those people your whole life, but also just having a awareness of where you came from and what that is not a bad thing. So when you strip that from somebody, there's trauma. So Hakens did do things in not necessarily always a bad way, though. They consider fairness essential to an orderly society. So over time, they kept giving freedoms increasingly to the Anders. They are eventually seen as equals because of this, and then future generations of Hakens end up feeling shame at what they did to the Anders in the first place.
Which, okay, but we've talked about how you are not liable for the sins of your father, right?
Right.
Your daddy did a bad thing. That doesn't mean you did a bad thing.
Right.
So this guilt you feel over things shouldn't be there.
Yeah, you're not necessarily a piece of shit just because they were.
Right.
But the Anders always wanted revenge the whole time. They never let that flame of hatred kind of burn out.
Which is fair.
Yeah.
I mean, it's fair.
Yeah, especially because, like we said, they were stripped of their culture. They had to pretend like they were Hakens, but they weren't.
Right.
Kind of, in a way.
They were taken over. Look, maybe it wasn't brutal, but it was harsh. And they were taken over. And they didn't ask for that.
Yeah.
If that had happened to Richard, he would have fucking slaughtered the fucking council. He's already done it like a couple of times, so don't tell me that he wouldn't. I'm just saying, the idea that the takeover happened is the bad thing that we are not going to move our foot on saying was fine. The idea of the cultures coming together, people working together, could have been done amicably, and that would have been a better way. That would have been the correct way.
Yeah. But since they didn't do it that way.
The
Anders wanted revenge. And so access to fair laws eventually let them gain status. They work hard. They become respected. They go from working class to merchants. They amass fortunes. Eventually, they're moneylenders and the financial power in Anderith. So they go from being the subjugated people to becoming equal, if not more powerful, than the Hakens who are actually in charge. Hakens grow complacent, Anders stay focused on their goal. Because the Hakens are just like, we're cool. We're best friends.
Yeah, it's all fine, right?
High five.
We took over and you're fine with it.
Yeah. All right, that's been a lot to digest. So I think at this point, we just need to take a little break, and we'll be right back. And we're back with some more Anderith history.
Yay! Oh, is there going to be a test at the end of this, or
just for you?
Fuck.
So the Anders were teachers. Speaking of tests, and they controlled the curriculum. The children were taught history and culture, so they're going to grow up to know their place in society. The Hakens thought these teachings were going to help the children, be good, well-rounded adults. Instead, it just put guilt on young minds that really couldn't handle those ideas and contributed to the erosion of society and really the respect for Haken rule. If everyone thinks that Hakens are bullshit, then why are they in charge? Eventually, a decades-long drought comes, which sounds really long.
It is.
Water is important.
Like, even a year is bad because it fucks up the whole production process, kind of.
Yeah. And if you don't have, like, a giant 4 or 5 lakes around your state that are full of fresh water, then where are you even getting your drinking water?
Or, like, food supply.
Yeah.
Like, you just became a fishing people, but then that water goes away after 10 fucking years.
Yeah, it dries up, right? All right, well, at this point, the Anders made their move, right? This is the perfect time for them to exact their revenge.
The evil Haken overlords are vulnerable.
Yes.
Time to attack.
Strike at the underbelly. The economy is based on crops here, so everybody struggles. The government could have stepped in and possibly done something to help, but at this point, they were already scared to piss off the moneylenders, because at this point, you've already had a couple generations of Hakens now, so those Hakens that are in power have been taught that they're actually really shitty and Anders are better. So they actually don't want to piss off the Anders and have people go, well, you're actually the worst person. So people died. Lots of people died. Fairfield ended up burning to the ground, Anders had all that fucking money, so they were able to use that money to buy food from other places and ended up being the only hope for most people to survive in this time period. The government ended up being blamed. The Anders helped spread that insurrection among the people in the streets, and Haken rulers ended up being put to death in front of everybody and dragged through the streets.
Yay.
Yeah, it was great.
Super.
But this is kind of telling us how exactly we got to where we are with Fitch being so downtrodden, right?
Right. This is why he believes about himself what he believes.
Yeah.
Because he believes he's a bad person, because he's always been told he's a bad person. But now, because of his own actions, he is a bad person, actually.
Yeah.
So that's a bummer.
But he was also like
you weren't inherently. You had a fucking choice there, Fitch.
Yeah.
You fucked it.
Yeah, but what if he chose? Well, we're not going to talk about Fitch anymore. We got to keep going. We got to keep going. So the purge of these learned Hakens was really fucking bloody, and the entire ruling class was murdered. Anders seized power, brought order. They changed fucking everything about the way Anderith worked, though, at this time.
Which also kind of means, Hakens were known to have a fair system of justice. So now that the Anders have it, they are distorting that system of justice and making it not fair anymore, even though Anders are viewed as the better people.
Yes. And also, they were super bloody in doing so. It wasn't like a quick death or a merciful thing that they did.
It wasn't like the Haken takeover where it was maybe harsh, but not brutal.
Right.
They did it brutal.
Right. So here's a list of some things that the Hakens have to live by now. They can't fairly judge Anders because they did injustices towards them in the past, so they are not qualified to do so. And Anders are the only ones that can. They were fucked over in the past, so we're the only people who have the right to judge people. Hakens willingly agree with this because they don't want to be fucking stoned in the street, basically. They don't want anyone to go, yeah, of course you disagree because you're a piece of shit Haken. They can't hold power. They can't have surnames anymore unless they prove themselves.
Surname, I should fucking know this. Your surname is just a last name, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's no extra connotation with surname to like, we're these folks and we're in this land, like work for this lord or king or whatever.
No, it's your last name.
Okay, yeah. Perfect.
But that was because the Hakens had made the Anders call them by their surnames. But sometimes you call a boss or an authority figure Mr. So-and-so, right? So
yeah.
It sounds maybe rough on paper, but maybe it wasn't actually that bad.
It's kind of taken away the identity. Like if we always knew you as Mr. So-and-so, now we're not going to call you Mr. So-and-so. That made you feel good. Now you're Bill.
Yeah.
Looking at you, Bill.
No.
But it puts you on a level ground with the other guy. So they took that from them. That's what the point was.
Yes, that is the point. They took that away. I was just looking at it as like, normally when you call somebody by their last name, at least today in this day and age, it's more like a nickname. It's cute.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Well, it's formal though, too.
If I just called you Bruni, I don't
Would
feel
you
like
call every single teacher growing up? You call them by their first name?
you call him Mr. something, but listen.
That's what I'm saying.
And I said the Mr. thing originally, but I'm just saying if you took away the Mr. and you were just like Bruni.
Oh yeah, without the Mr. Sure, it's a nickname, but the use of the last name is the formality.
Yeah.
The Mr. So-and-so.
Mr. So-and-so. So they also, Hakens can't be downtrodden because they are corrupt by nature, so they cannot be the oppressed people. And only oppressed people can be virtuous because they were fucking oppressed.
That's also wrong.
And Hakens, still in their state now, the way that they oppress people every day, even with looks, because they're just shitty people. They're just mean, bad people, so they can never be oppressed. They also can't learn to read, and they have to go to a penance assembly. We know this, to keep in line every month.
Sounds familiar.
Month? Probably more than that.
Cough devotion.
Yeah, but
there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
It's different.
Yeah.
It is different. It just made me think of the devotion.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too. We did learn that they did not intermix with the Hakens and the Anders because they always thought that the redheaded Hakens were like a crime against the creator, so they couldn't actually marry them at all.
See, that's where they're fucking up.
No,
y'all should be
interbreeding.
fucking. Look at all the extra flavors you have now. Go try.
It is wild to me that there was never, because that feels like something that the Hakens would have encouraged. So it's surprising to me that in the beginning of Haken rule,
It didn't happen more.
yeah.
Well, I think it was maybe more fresh, two new groups of people coming together in the way that they did. Also, it was a harsh takeover. So they're not fucking friends right off the bat. Like, the Hakens came in and took over. We don't like you right off the bat. Had they done it my way, just had a conversation, figured out a solution for everybody, they could have been fucking this whole time.
Accurate.
Whole time.
That could be accurate. Also,
We can all agree that's what's important here. They should have been fucking and thinking.
what I find interesting is that what this proves to me is maybe the Hakens didn't fully obliterate the Ander culture, because it seems like they still kept their religion despite all of this, because they didn't believe that they could fuck or marry Haken. Well, it doesn't say fuck. They couldn't marry Hakens, so there was not any intermixing. So it kind of feels like they were still allowed to keep their religion and hence some of their culture, because I feel like Hakens wouldn't have a culture that says that they are crimes against the creator. So that's just a point for the Hakens. Another point for the Hakens. The Anders teach a much different version than everything that we just heard. They were an oppressed people the whole fucking time.
The whole time.
And only by their higher nature were they able to like claw their way to the top. And that's what happened. It could be true. That's what Kahlan says. That could even be true, but it sounds a little bit less likely than the story we just heard. So Richard questions kind of what the Midlands Council was doing at this whole time. And they didn't step in because the Hakens submitted to it. That's what she says. She's like, hands up. Nope. It wasn't our fucking place.
They said they were cool. That was the end of that. We didn't look into it.
The Midlands was an alliance of lands. Confessors just come to step in and make sure that there was a fair ruling to an extent. They weren't able to really get into the weeds with what was going on in Anderith at the time.
Look, there's certain shit we don't fuck with. Some people are gonna fall through the cracks.
They didn't like murder of political opponents, which I think doesn't mean within the town of Anderith, but it means more like between different Fool's lands, right, inside Midlands.
Right. We're not gonna let anything happen to the rich people. Don't worry about it.
Right. Like Kelton can't kill the king of Gallia. That's not cool, but if somebody in Kelton kills the king of Kelton, then they can become the king of Kelton. That's fine. We don't give a shit.
If like Kelton or Gallia wanted to take over Anderith, I don't think Kahlan would give a shit. I think they're like, well, Anderith is small and doesn't provide much. Let them fucking do it. But you can't take over a whole ass another country. They're already established and provide value.
Yeah, that's the only reason I even brought it up is because she said we don't like the murder of political opponents, and I was like, well, this whole thing is a little bit like political opponents, kind of.
Yeah,
but
that's
whatever.
what it's all about.
Whatever. But if people go along with the way their land works, you know what? We aren't going to fuck with it. Bizarre rule is not opposed, just fucking brutal rule. Richard sees this as an abuse of ignorant people. They see it as a way to peace, and that's their right. So Kahlan just keeps arguing that it's fine. This is fine.
I mean, look, it's not good, and nobody is saying that it is necessarily good or the right way for things to have happened. But it is where we are right now, and right now there is currently peace.
Right.
But it also kind of does feel like the quote, and I'm heavily using quotes here, the peace that's kept in like an abusive household, right? Yeah, they're not trying to run away and complain about it or anything, but that is because they keep getting beat every time they speak up. So in the same breath, yeah, I understand that it's peaceful, but like, is it though? Like, is it actually though? Or is at least half of these people simmering with rage and, hey, Whether or not they take action about that is a total different thing. There could be a conversation right now about it to try and alleviate some of the problems.
They aren't simmering with rage because they feel so shitty about themselves that they all think they deserve it.
Yeah, they're terrified.
But this was centuries ago. No land was strong enough to enforce law on all of the Midlands at that point. Anyways, that's kind of what Kahlan's point is. We didn't really have the power to do that. Together, we all worked to provide for each other. But had we tried to step in on the way one of the lands worked, then everybody would have started to freak out and the whole alliance would have just fallen the fuck apart.
Cough. You don't know that. Cough. I'm done.
There could have been a conversation, maybe.
There could have been a conversation. That's all I'm saying. I know I'm a broken record this episode, but man, talk to people.
Until Richard came along, though, she says that no land was strong enough to set down law for all of the Midlands. And so now they can. Now they can make one blanket law for everybody, which before this chapter, I think had felt better than the way it tastes right now. But the one thing she says that is true, the alliance before wouldn't have had a chance against Jagang because the army was not one, it was splintered, right?
I mean, the culmination and collection of people does equal a larger defense of all of those peoples.
Yeah.
You can protect yourself from a whole lot more shit.
Yeah.
It's just in the way, like if there's no communication between any of the countries in the Midlands, when the old world shows up and knocks on their fucking door, if they're not talking, there's no unified front there. They just sweep the whole fucking thing and it's over.
Yeah.
And they can't risk that.
How do you eat an elephant?
One piece at a time?
One bite at a time.
That's right.
That's right. So they start talking about what they would need to do to get Anderith on board. And the Sovereign would need to be convinced. But actually... I
think I just heard a little bit of your Southern come through. The Sovereign.
The Sovereign would need to be convinced, but actually they need the Minister of Culture, Bertrand Chambor, to make that decision.
For that whole country to, like, be on the side of Richard is what you're saying.
Yes.
Okay.
For them to come with the Midlands and...
join the alliance.
Yeah, all that shit. Anderith is a power to be reckoned with. Though, so it's not just, we can't just like assume that we roll up there and they go, okay, cool. Also, the Anders are not lazy merchants anymore. They are the only ones allowed weapons in that land and tend to be good with them. And they're not going to be easily won over. I think that might just be the only person that we know that is good with weapons at all in Anderith is Bert. Everybody else has not had any mention of even having a weapon. So that was interesting to me. Is that like, we know that Bert is the only one with a sword and he knows how to use it.
Well, yeah, he is definitely one person that sticks out that has a sword. There is an army. We know that the Haken women are able to join the Anderith army, but the Haken men cannot. So there is a standing army there. But the idea, I believe, is that now that the Anders are in charge, they have taught everybody to fight, right? Initially, they weren't. The Hakens were the people, but then they got smarted up and then they took over in a really super bad way. But now they're good at the violence bit.
The Anders themselves are, yes.
Correct. That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
So what Kahlan is saying here is like, we got to go convince these people, but we're not just talking to a weird mix of people that don't still necessarily know how to defend themselves.
Yeah.
They have a fucking system and they're effective.
Yeah.
But that's why we're talking about them specifically, because Jagang also knows that.
Yes.
So we got to get these specific people on top who are in charge, who, surprise, we've been reading about the whole time, to convince them to join our side.
Yeah. Come over here.
Boom.
Red Rover.
So essentially,
let Anderith come over.
She's warning him that we are about to go into the dumpster fire, Richard. Here we go. Yeah.
Strap in if that's where you want to fucking go, bud.
Yeah.
Yeah. So all that to say, that was today's chapter, and
we made it through.
Yeah. It wasn't that bad, I don't think. I don't know. I hope that you guys all had some thoughts yourself, whether they agreed with ours or not, and I would love to hear what your thoughts are, because honestly, we did go over a lot of this over and over and over.
Yeah.
In the last few days. And so I would just love to hear other opinions. So thank you guys for being here. And that's our truth. We would love to hear all of yours. So write to us in your journey books to podcastatt at gmail.com, or find us on any of our social medias.
Glug, glug, glug.
If you would like to support this podcast and hear some more
exclusive content,
find us over on patreon.com/podcastatt
again.
where every tier is a happy tier. Thank you all for listening. And that's all for us, friends.
We'll see you real soon.
Bye.